We know that the whole creation has been groaning in labor pains until now, and not only the creation, but we ourselves, who have the first fruits of the Spirit, groan inwardly while we wait for adoption, the redemption of our bodies. For in hope we were saved. Now, hope that is seen is not hope, for who hopes for what is seen? But if we hope for what we do not see, we wait for it with patience. Likewise, the Spirit helps us in our weakness, for we do not know how to pray as we ought, but that very Spirit intercedes with sighs too deep for words. And God, who searches the heart, knows what is the mind of the Spirit, because the Spirit intercedes for the saints according to the will of God. We know that all things work together for good for those who love God, who are called according to His purpose.
Now we are officially at 100% of the state is in drought. From last October to this spring was the driest winter in history in North Dakota since we began record keeping 127 years ago. Having a record wildfire season this year, we've had over 1,400 fires in North Dakota so far. Over 100,000 acres have burned. You know, we're all North Dakotans. We know, we feel like, hey, we got this. We can figure it out. We can handle it.
Livestock producers, first and foremost, are the ones that are going to be more devastated by any drought. Feed costs are through the roof. You're competing with neighbors and other interests for land. When people get hit with this and they're already under stress, it just causes more frustration, more stress. Then they're calling me and they want me to go hang someone, shoot someone, or haul someone to jail, and I don't have that authority.
North Dakota's going to end up in a year with about a third the cow herd. This is the worst mess I've ever seen.
I think there's too much red tape. Am I wrong?
You're out of business next year. These cowboys are selling their factory when they sell a mama cow. I feel sorry for these guys. If you don't keep young people coming in.
There's no grain, there's no rain, and there's no money. But we need to give these guys hope because they're not going to get enough hay.
I try not to give false hope.
I didn't spend all these years to build that place to lose it over a drought.
So once the topsoil is gone, like you said, and the land is ruined, what do you have left? And all we're looking for is basically tomorrow, one day at a time.
It almost seems hopeless.
Well, good morning, everyone. Looking at another glitch this weekend, and that's discouragement. And that discouragement is tough. We might even say that any true follower of Christ must eventually face and overcome discouragement. In August of 2007, Time magazine ran an article about Mother Teresa. And the article started in December of 1979 when Teresa went to Oslo, Norway, to receive the Nobel Peace Prize. And she was strong in her urging of others to follow Christ and eliminate hunger in the world. She told the world that during Christmas that year, everyone should have joy, because that radiating joy, in her words, that radiating joy is real, because Christ is everywhere. Christ in our hearts, Christ in the poor we meet, Christ in the smile we give, and in the smile that we receive. But in that same article, it went on to say, yet less than 3 months earlier, in a letter to a spiritual confidant, that was the Reverend Michael Vanderpeet, that is only now, at that time, 2007, being made public, she wrote with a weary familiarity of a different Christ, one that was absent. She said, Jesus has a very special love for you, assuring Vanderpeet. But as for me, the silence and the emptiness is so great that I look and do not see, listen and do not hear. The tongue moves in prayer but does not speak. I want you to pray for me, that I let him have a free hand. Discouragement is tough. St. John of the Cross, the Spanish mystic from the 1600s, knew something of this problem, and so did Henry Nouwen, both of whom took up this phrase called the dark night of the soul to describe times of discouragement. I have certainly had my dark night of the soul, la noche oscura del alma. St. John knew that there would be times when it felt like Jesus was nowhere to be found. And I feel sure that if we went around and asked people who are sincerely and wholeheartedly followers of Christ, that they would all acknowledge that they have had such times. If only we had a super strong backstop with us, you know? John Ortberg wrote in an article in Christianity Today some time back, and he said, many years ago, I was walking in Newport Beach, a beach in Southern California, with two friends. We walked past a bar where, of course, nothing bad can happen, and there was a fight going on outside, and the fight had spilled out into the street, just like an old Western. He said several guys were beating up on another guy, and he was bleeding from his forehead. And he said, we knew we had to do something, so we went up over to break up the fight. And of course, these guys, just like you might imagine, they went up and said, hey, you guys, cut that out. And it did absolutely no good. Well, then he said, all of a sudden, those guys fighting, looked at the two of them in fear in their eyes. And the guys who had been beating up on the one guy stopped and started to slink away. And he said, John said, I didn't know why until we turned to look behind us, and out of the bar had come what he said was the biggest man I've ever seen. He was something like 6 feet 7 inches tall, maybe 300 pounds, 2% body fat, just huge. And they called him Bubba, not to his face, when they talked about him. And Bubba didn't say a word. He just stood there and looked at those guys and flexed his muscles. And you could tell he was hoping that they'd try to have a go at him. And all of a sudden, John said his attitude was transformed. And he said to those guys, and you better not let us catch you coming around here again. He said he was a different person because he had great, big, strong Bubba behind him. He said he was ready to confront and resolve with firmness anything that was a problem, released from anxiety and fear, filled with boldness and confidence, ready to help everybody that needed helping, ready to serve where serving was required. Why? Because he had great big Bubba standing behind him, that he was safe. He was not alone. He said if he were convinced that Bubba was with him 24 hours a day, it would have made a fundamentally different approach to his life. If he knew that Bubba was behind him all day long and people wouldn't want to mess with him, he said, well, we would have a much greater thing going on. Well, something much greater than Bubba is behind us, but sometimes we just can't see it. Nehemiah knew this was a problem. When the people were building the wall, it seemed like too great a task. And Nehemiah saw the discouragement among those people. And at one point, he says to all the people, the work, yeah, it's extensive and spread out, and we are widely separated from each other along the wall. He knew that the people could not see the progress being made. He knew that they needed to see that they were not working alone. And for anyone who is sincerely in ministry, discouragement will find them. It will find us. And if it is not knocked down, it's going to unfold and bring a lot of its other friends, these glitches that we've talked about, doubt, depression, loneliness, anger. Several of the glitches we've seen will pile on when we feel discouraged. There are a lot of words used in Hebrew that we might link to the word trust. And this is kind of important. Chasah, the word is my rock and my fortress, my deliverer, my God, my strength in whom I trust. That's Psalm 18:2. That word meaning trust means to lean on something or someone. So if you're hiking with a group of your friends and you sprain your ankle, you're going to lean on those friends, one of them at least, to help you get out of the wilderness. God is that one we lean on when things get tough. We can lean on our friends when things get tough, or family for support. The next word is bitak. In God I will praise his word. In God I have put my trust. I will not fear what flesh can do unto me. That's Psalm 56, verse 4. This word has the concrete meaning of to cling to something. It's got a related word, which means a melon that clings to the vine. And even though the melon is huge, just like our problems sometimes seem to be, the vine is very small, we can get this picture of that word. We may not see God, but he is our strength, the one who nourishes us, just like the vine nourishes the melon. And then yakal. My righteousness is near, my salvation has gone forth, and mine arms shall judge the people. The isles shall wait upon me, and on mine arms shall they trust. And that's Isaiah 51:5. That word usually translated as hope, but it doesn't mean to wonder if something will happen and hope that it does. It means to know that something is going to happen in the future. We do not hope that God will protect us. We know he will protect us. In the passage above, that concrete image of God holding on to, somebody holding on to God's arm can be seen, but it's a euphemism in Hebrew to mean something else, in this case, strength. It's saying that the people will know that God's strength will save them. And then this last word, which we've seen before some time back, is aman. Trust ye not in a friend, put ye not confidence in a guide, keep the doors of thy mouth from her that lieth in thy bosom. That's Micah 7, and that word aman means be firm. When setting up a tent, you always choose firm soil to drive in your tent stakes so that when the wind blows, the pegs won't be pulled out of the ground or collapse your tent. It's the word that has a verb form, amen. So when we say amen, we're literally saying, I stand firm on this prayer. Let this be firm. Let it be this way. If we take a fearless inventory of our behavior, we might see that it reveals we're still trying to take care of things by ourselves. We probably don't think God is reliable in every area of life. He that loses wealth loses much. He that loses a friend loses more. But he that loses his courage loses all. These are words from Miguel de Cervantes, the writer. Discouragement means we have lost our courage. And perhaps the worst thing about discouragement is what it does to us. I saw a story about a group of friends who went hiking in the Swiss Alps. One of those guys named John and his friends, they went once a year somewhere to climb. And they made their way up to a famous spot on one hill, and someone said, hey, instead of going back, let's camp here a few nights. Then someone else said, hey, look at that hill over there. Let's go climb that mountain. There aren't very many people there. And another friend said, no way. I've heard people talk about that mountain. It is very hard and difficult. And then another said, if it was easy, everyone else would do it. And John took this as his cue and his challenge and took off by himself to climb that other mountain. Well, 2 hours later, John reached the top. And he was met by a few cheers from the people that were already there. And while climbing the peak, he realized it wasn't that difficult. And he asked someone, why are there a lot of people on the peak below and only a handful of people here? If people could reach that peak, then they can reach this one also, if they put in some effort. And one of the veteran climbers smiled and said, most people in that crowd right there are happy with what they find easy. They never think that they have the potential to achieve more. Even people who are not happy there don't want to take any risk. They think that if they take risks, they will lose what they already have. And I wonder if that guy had something there. I wonder how many people reach a point and then are satisfied to just stay there. I wonder how many Christians hit a wall of discouragement and stop right there. I wonder how many people have stared face to face with their own dark night of the soul and decided it wasn't worth the risk to serve the poor will welcome and invite those who nobody else will welcome or invite. I wonder if this is why Matthew says the path to life is narrow and much more challenging path. There's a very old story that goes like this. It was advertised that the devil was going to put up his tools and go out of business. On the date of the sale, the tools were placed on display, each being marked with its sale price. There were a lot of treacherous gifts and implements: hatred, envy, jealousy, deceit, lying, pride, and so on. But laid apart from the rest was a harmless-looking tool that was really well worn and priced extremely high. Somebody said, "What is the name of this tool?" Then the devil said, "That is discouragement." And the person said, "Why have you priced this tool so high?" The devil said, "Because it is more useful to me than all the others. I can pry open and get inside a person's heart with that when I cannot get near them with the other tools. It is badly worn because I use it on almost everyone, since so few people know it belongs to me." I pray that we can be the church that sees the big picture, that knows that God is working in the face of discouraging times, that knows following Christ can be done more easily than we imagine if we do not give up. I pray that we can be the church that is willing to do our part for the wall and know that others are doing theirs also. I pray that we can be that church, the church that relies on God in all things. Let's be that church. Thanks be to God. Amen.